April 30, 1945. Deep beneath the shattered streets of Berlin, in a concrete tomb called the Führerbunker, Eva Braun sat on a small sofa. She wore a dark blue dress with a white collar, her blonde hair neatly styled, her face calm. Just 40 hours earlier she had become Eva Hitler. But everything changed in the space of minutes. At around 3:30 in the afternoon, a single gunshot cracked through the private study. Adolf Hitler lay dead beside her, blood trickling from his right temple. Eva had bitten into a cyanide capsule. Her body slumped, legs drawn up, shoes kicked off, the faint smell of bitter almonds still hanging in the air. Hours later, Soviet troops swept through the ruins. What most people don't know is that Eva Braun's partially burned remains would be dug up, stuffed into a wooden coffin, autopsied, reburied, and exhumed again decades later. When they finally opened that coffin, the evidence inside told a story almost too grim to look at directly. Eva Anna Paula Braun was born on February 6, 1912, in Munich, Germany. She grew up in a strict lower-middle-class Catholic family as the middle of 3 daughters. Her father, Friedrich, was a schoolteacher. Her mother, Franziska, worked as a seamstress. Money was tight. The parents divorced in 1921 amid Germany's economic chaos, then remarried the next year. As a teenager, Eva was lively and athletic. She loved skiing, swimming, and photography. She attended a Catholic girls' school and later a convent school. Friends described her as pretty, fun-loving, and not especially political. One humanizing detail stands out: at 17 she already felt the pressure of a conventional life she didn't want. She took a job as an assistant and model at Heinrich Hoffmann's photography studio in Munich. That decision changed everything. In October 1929, Hoffmann introduced the 17-year-old Eva to a 40-year-old man known then as a wolf. It was Adolf Hitler. What most people don't know is how quickly she fell for him. Hitler was charming in private, full of attention. Within years she became his constant companion, though kept hidden from the public. Instead of a normal life, Eva found a system that rewarded her loyalty and silence. Hitler gave her money, a villa in Munich, and a place at the Berghof, his alpine retreat. But the first sign of darkness appeared early. In 1932, feeling neglected, Eva attempted suicide with a pistol. She survived. Hitler responded with gifts and promises. She tried again in 1935. Each time she chose to stay. The machinery of the Nazi inner circle had already begun to pull her deeper. By the mid-1930s, Eva had moved into Hitler's world completely. She lived at the Berghof from 1936 onward, hosting private parties, filming home movies, and sunbathing while the Nazi regime tightened its grip on Germany. Hitler never married her publicly. He said marriage would hurt his image with female voters. Instead, she existed in the shadows as his devoted companion. The system that enabled her rise was the same one destroying Europe. The Nazi Party rewarded absolute personal loyalty. Eva gave it without question. She learned to avoid politics in conversation. She focused on Hitler's comfort, his meals, his dogs, his moods. By 1939, when World War II began with the invasion of Poland on September 1, Eva was fully inside the circle. Step by step the escalation felt inevitable. In 1940, after the fall of France, Hitler seemed unbeatable. Eva hosted lavish teas at the Berghof while German armies conquered country after country. Unknown to the German public, she traveled with Hitler to occupied territories and stayed at his various headquarters. Each military victory made her position more secure. Each defeat later would bind her tighter. By early 1945, with the Red Army advancing from the east and Allied forces from the west, Eva made her choice. Against Hitler's orders, she flew into besieged Berlin on March 7 and joined him in the Führerbunker under the Reich Chancellery. She told friends she would never leave his side. The machinery that had rewarded her loyalty now demanded the final price. Eva Braun lived at the center of the Nazi regime for 16 years, yet she later claimed she knew little of its worst crimes. The record tells a different story. She was present during the years when the Holocaust was planned and carried out. 6 million Jews were murdered. Millions more, Roma, disabled people, political opponents, Slavs, died in camps, mass shootings, and forced labor. One shocking statistic reveals the scale: by 1945, The Nazis had built more than 44,000 camps and incarceration sites across Europe. Eva spent much of the war in luxury while this machinery operated at full capacity. What most people don't know is how close she was to key figures. She socialized with Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, and Albert Speer. She received gifts and attended events while the final solution unfolded. According to court testimony from the Nuremberg trials, high-ranking Nazis discussed extermination openly in inner circles. Eva was not a decision-maker, but she chose to remain in that world. One survivor later said, "We saw the luxury of the leaders while we starved and died by the millions." Another eyewitness account from the Berghof described Eva laughing and taking photographs during visits when the death camps were already operating at peak efficiency. Auschwitz alone killed approximately 1.1 million people. Treblinka, about 800,000. In a letter or note from the period, Eva wrote of her devotion, she wanted only to be with Hitler. A document recovered after the war shows she received special privileges, including access to scarce goods while ordinary Germans rationed and Jews were deported. According to dental technician Fritz Eckmann, who worked on her teeth, Eva visited the dentist regularly while the regime she supported sent millions to their deaths. Her life in the bunker during the final weeks showed the contrast. While Berlin burned and civilians died under artillery fire, Eva hosted small parties, drank champagne, and played with Hitler's dog Blondie. She distributed cyanide capsules to others as a final gift. She wrote letters telling her family she was proud to die with the Führer. The horror was not random. It was enabled by thousands of people who, like Eva, looked away or embraced the system that rewarded them. By April 1945, the end was inevitable. Soviet forces had reached the outskirts of Berlin by April 16. The Battle of Berlin began. Hitler's once mighty armies were reduced to old men and boys. On April 20th, his 56th birthday, Eva helped organize a small celebration in the bunker. But the mood was grim. Artillery shells shook the concrete walls. The seeds of collapse had always been there: overstretched armies, fanatical decisions, and Hitler's refusal to face reality. On April 22, Hitler suffered a breakdown when he realized relief would not come. He raged at his generals. Eva stayed calm. She comforted him and refused to leave. Meanwhile, Soviet troops tightened the noose. By April 28, Berlin was almost completely surrounded. That night, Hitler finally married Eva in a small civil ceremony in the bunker. The war was lost, but she had won her place in history beside him. When the news came that Mussolini had been executed and hung upside down, Hitler decided their fate. He tested cyanide on his dog Blondie on April 29. The dog died quickly. Eva watched. Her reaction to the downfall was quiet acceptance. She told Secretary Trottel Junge she was glad it was ending this way. The outside world had finally caught up. There was nowhere left to run. April 30, 1945. Around 1 p.m., Hitler and Eva ate their last meal, spaghetti and salad. They said goodbye to the remaining staff. Eva wore her favorite dark blue dress. Her hair was perfectly set. Her face showed no fear, only determination. She gave away personal items, including her fur coat to Trottel Junge, saying, "Take my fur coat as a memory. I always like well-dressed women." At approximately 3:30 p.m., the couple retired to Hitler's private study. Hitler wore his usual uniform. Eva sat beside him on the sofa. Witnesses later described the scene. They closed the door. A few minutes passed. Then a single gunshot rang out. SS officer Otto Gunsch and valet Heinz Ling entered. Hitler sat slumped forward, blood from the head wound. His eyes were open, staring. Eva lay next to him, her body relaxed but lifeless. The cyanide had worked instantly. Her face showed slight contortion from the poison, but she looked almost peaceful. No struggle. Her shoes were neatly placed under the sofa. The smell of burnt almonds filled the small room. Their bodies were wrapped in blankets and carried up the emergency stairs to the Reich Chancellery garden. Shells were still falling. SS men doused the corpses with 200 liters of gasoline and set them alight in a shell crater. The flames rose as Soviet artillery pounded the area. By evening, only charred fragments remained. Soviet soldiers found the burned remains days later. They were identified through dental records, placed in a coffin, moved, buried in Magdeburg, and exhumed again in 1970 before being destroyed. The fragments of Eva Braun's life ended in secrecy and ash. What lingers is the uncomfortable truth. A young woman from an ordinary Munich family chose this path, not as a powerless victim, but as someone who saw the darkness and walked toward it anyway. She traded normal life for proximity to power, and paid with everything. In the end, the coffin they opened revealed not just bones, but the cost of blind devotion. How many others, in quieter ways, make the same choice today?